The fluorescent lights of the roadside diner hummed softly as Arthur wiped down the corner booth for the third time that evening. His hands trembled slightly, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what he was about to do. Through the glass window, he could see his daughter Evelyn sitting in their battered transport vehicle, her small face pressed against the window, watching the strange alien establishments of the outer colony with wide, curious eyes. Evelyn was 7 years old. She had her mother's eyes, bright, inquisitive, filled with wonder at the universe. She also had her mother's illness, the one that had taken Sarah 3 months ago on a medical transport that never reached the inner systems in time. Arthur hadn't told Evelyn yet. How could he? How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the person who tucked her in every night, who sang her songs from old Earth, who promised to show her the crystal moons of Epsilon Prime, was never coming back? The diner's door chimed as Arthur entered. The establishment was one of those universal pit stops scattered across the outer routes, a place where humans, Zithrans, Krell, and a dozen other species stopped for sustenance during long hauls across the void. The air smelled of synthetic proteins and recycled atmosphere, but it was warm. That's all Arthur needed tonight. Behind the counter stood a Zithran waitress, her chitinous exoskeleton gleaming blue-green under the lights. Multiple arms worked simultaneously, one pouring coffee, another wiping surfaces, a third manipulating a datapad. Her compound eyes, however, were fixed on Arthur with an intensity that suggested she saw more than just another customer. "Table for two?" she asked, her translator rendering her clicks and whistles into perfect standard. "Actually, Arthur's voice caught. He approached the counter, away from the other patrons. "I need to ask you something. Something strange." The Zithran tilted her head, a gesture she'd learned from observing humans. "I am called Jatara. Speak." Arthur glanced back at the transport vehicle, at Evelyn's small silhouette. "My daughter. She's out there. Her mother died 3 months ago, but I haven't told her yet. I couldn't. She keeps asking when Mommy's coming back from the medical station, and I keep saying, 'Soon, baby.'" "Soon?" Jatara's antennae quivered, a sign of attention among her kind. "Tonight is her birthday," Arthur continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I promised her that her mother would be here, that we'd celebrate together. I couldn't break her heart on her birthday. I know it's wrong. I know I'm only making it worse, but I just need one more day. One more day where she can be happy." He looked up at Jatara, and in his eyes, she saw something that transcended species, that bridged the vast gulf between human and Zithran. Desperation born of love. "Can you pretend to be my daughter's mom? Just for one meal, please?" Jatara stood motionless for a long moment. In Zithran culture, deception was considered a grave transgression. But in those same cultural texts, there were stories, ancient tales of the Cathara, the compassionate lie, the merciful untruth told to ease suffering. "I do not look human," Jatara finally said. "She's 7. She spent half her life on colony stations and transport ships. She's met dozens of species. I told her that the medical station had to change her mom a little to save her life. She'll believe it. For tonight, she'll believe it." Jatara's multiple arms stilled. She had served thousands of beings in this diner, humans rushing to corporate jobs, Krell mercenaries, Vexian pilgrims. She had witnessed joy, sorrow, anger, and fear. But this human's love for his offspring struck something deep within her neural clusters. "What is your daughter's name?" "Evelyn." "And her mother?" "Sarah. She liked vanilla synth shakes and always ordered extra fries." Jatara removed her apron. "Bring Evelyn inside." Arthur's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Thank you so much." 5 minutes later, Evelyn bounced into the diner, her curly hair wild from the transport's recycled air. She froze when she saw Jatara standing beside their booth. "Daddy, that's not..." "Evelyn, sweetie, remember what I told you? About the medical station?" Evelyn stared at Jatara, her child's mind working through the impossibility of it all. Then Jatara did something remarkable. She lowered herself to Evelyn's eye level, and in a voice modulated to sound as gentle as her physiology allowed, said, "Hello, my little star. Happy birthday." It was something Sarah had always called Evelyn. Arthur had mentioned it during those frantic minutes of explanation. Evelyn's lower lip trembled. "Mommy, you look so different." "The doctors had to change me, but I'm still here. I'm still your mom, and I wouldn't miss your birthday for anything in this galaxy." What happened next would remain etched in Jatara's memory clusters for the rest of her life. Evelyn, with the acceptance that only children possess, stepped forward and hugged Jatara's chitinous form. The Zithran, who had never been hugged by a human child, who had never felt the fierce, unconditional love of human offspring, carefully wrapped her arms around the small girl. They sat. They ate. Jatara ordered vanilla synth shakes and extra fries. She listened as Evelyn talked about her school on the colony station, about the stars she wanted to visit, about the drawings she'd made for her mother. Arthur watched, tears streaming silently down his face. When the meal ended, Jatara walked them to their transport. At the door, Evelyn looked up at her. "When will I see you again, Mommy?" Jatara's antennae drooped, sadness. "I have to go back to the medical station, little star. But your daddy will always be here, and I will always love you. Promise?" "Promise." As the transport pulled away, Jatara stood in the parking area, watching until the lights disappeared into the colony traffic. Another waitress, a human, joined her. "That was kind of you," the human said. "It was illogical, deceptive. Against my nature. It was human." Jatara considered this. In her years among humans, she had learned that they were fragile creatures, their bodies weak, their lifespans short, their worlds harsh. Yet they possessed something that made them remarkable, the ability to love so fiercely that they would break their own hearts to spare another's. Inside the diner, on the table where they'd sat, Arthur had left an enormous tip and a handwritten note. "Thank you for making my daughter smile one more time. Tomorrow I'll tell her the truth. But tonight she got to say goodbye. You gave us both that gift." Jatara carefully folded the note, placing it in a sealed compartment near her neural center. In the vast, cold universe, she had witnessed something extraordinary, the kind of love that made humans, despite their countless flaws and weaknesses, one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Not because they were strong, but because they loved, despite their fragility, because they protected their young with a ferocity that transcended logic, because a father would humble himself before an alien stranger for one more moment of his daughter's happiness. That was humanity, and that was why Jatara would remember this night among the stars forever.